Gita. Not only this, it is also the motto of our Indian Air Force. Nabhas Prasham Deeptam simply means glory, magnificence, or the brilliance that fills the sky. Every year on the 8th of October, we celebrate Air Force Day to honor our brave warriors of the sky. This year, the Indian Air Force will be celebrating its 91st anniversary, and the parade is being held in the holy city of Prayagraj, Uttar Pradesh. In order to make the best of today, BHU PsyConnect presents Extending Psychology Beyond Borders webinar on the scope and significance of military psychology in India. So, how is the Josh audience? I'm sure it's high. In this webinar, we are going to talk about application of psychology in all the three wings of the army. What are the mental health needs of armed personnel? With a major focus regarding the working of Defense Institute of Psychological Research, DRDO, and how one can join this esteemed organization. All in all, this webinar is designed to share a message in society that even the bravest need help. Now, let me introduce you all with our guest of the day. She is as special as today's occasion and this webinar. I'm honored to talk about our guest, Dr. Sushma K. Kanaujia. She is currently serving as a psychology lecturer in Berlin School of Business and Innovation, Germany. She is a former assistant professor at Amity University, Gurgaon. Wait, that's not all. Being someone who is herself passionate about joining Indian Army, it gives me immense joy and pride to tell you all that Dr. Sushma has served the Defense Research and Development Organization DRDO as a scientist for 4 years. Not only this, her present assignment with the DIPR in India gave her the wonderful opportunity to work with the Central Selection Committee to assess and select candidates for high rank officer positions in the Indian Army. And of course, she is the alumni of BHU as she completed her PhD in 2019 from Banaras Hindu University. Her interest area is in the field of cognitive psychology, exclusively focusing on the topic of effects of affective state on the performance of prospective memory. Having her today with us is not less than a blessing for BHU PsyConnect. Ma'am, I extend my hearty welcome to you on behalf of your entire team. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Akriti, for such a lovely welcome. And I am so happy to be, back to. It feels like I'm back in BHU right now. And thank you very much. You gave a lovely introduction, and I'm so honored to be talking in this very special day today about how psychology can help in the military as well. So let's begin my presentation. I will just share my screen. Please let me know whether you all can view it. Okay. Is the presentation visible to all of you all?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, so today I am here to talk about extending psychology beyond borders, how psychology can help in the military, what is the scope and significance of military psychology in India. Being very close and associated to this in this particular organization, I have seen the effect of how psychologists, scientists can bring in the fields of military psychology. So there will be no special day than this to talk about this topic. As Akriti already mentioned, today's motto is the Indian Air Force Day celebration, which talks about Nabhasparshan Diptam. And today is the 91st anniversary of the Indian Air Force. So on October 8, 1932, the Indian Air Force was born as the Royal Indian Air Force under the British colonial rule. Its primary purpose was to assist and support the British Army in its campaign and warfare. Over the years, as we gained independence and the year 1950, when our constitution came, the Indian Air Force evolved as an essential component of the Indian Armed Forces. So the primary role, we all know what Indian Air Force does, right? We all know the amount of rescue operations that are conducted by the Indian Air Force. So the primary roles of the Indian Air Force are aerial warfare, strategic airlift of the humanitarian aid, and the aerial reconnaissance of specific operations, transport and rescue operations, and strategic operations. So, Indian Air Force is the aerial branch of the Indian Armed Forces. It's responsible for securing Indian airspace and conducting aerial warfare during the armed conflicts. It is one of the largest air forces in the world. Isn't it amazing to know that? By looking at this picture, I guess all of us know what our Indian Air Force does. We have all heard of the Operation Ganga recently, which rescued so many Indian nations in Ukraine, and the Air Force military was the one who rescued them. In Sudan, the recent flood in Himachal Pradesh and Manali, and the valor that the Indian Air Force has shown during these rescue operations is something which is very commendable. So now that we know what exactly our Indian Air Force does and what is military operations that they conduct, let's understand what military psychology is. It is nothing but a strategic resilience psychology in which we know the exact resilience psychological aspect of the military personnel. Military psychology is a specialized branch of psychology that focuses on the understanding and addressing the unique psychological challenges which is faced by the military personnel. It involves the application of psychological principles to enhance the mental well being, performance, and resilience of the individuals within the armed forces. So, now just understand this aspect. The purpose of psychologists in the Indian armed forces is so important because you people are selecting someone who is going to represent your nation, who's going to save your nations, and in such operations. So एक thin line hai between psychology and military psychology, which the psychologists cater to. So, what is your role? Now, as we know that this is such an important task, right? Military psychologist is something which is held by the responsibilities and shouldering men and women who serve the Indian Armed Forces, which serve as the toughest task. They are entrusted with safeguarding the security and sovereignty of the nation. So you are selecting those. You are the one who will be able to understand whether this person will be able to face the unimaginable changes, climate changes, other catastrophes. So these individuals are the backbone of our defense, right? The military psychologists, the armed forces, the navies are the backbones of our defense, facing scenarios which demands exceptional resilience, unwavering focus, and quick decision making. So here is the role of the psychologist in the military. It is of very paramount importance. It is very essential, and especially when it comes to selecting individuals for demanding and critical operations. So, given the gravity of these responsibilities, what you have to do, it becomes very important that we select individuals who are not only physically capable, but also mentally sound and prepared for the rigors of their duties. This is where the role of the psychologist shines brightly. They are the custodians of mental well-being. They are given the task of assessing, understanding, and strengthening the psychological readiness of these individuals, because you are doing a very important task. ये बात समझना बहुत जरूरी है कि हमारा काम सिर्फ यहाँ तक ही सीमित नहीं है कि हमें किसी को assess करके इस particular organization में भर्ती करानी है, but the work is beyond that, to make sure that the officer like qualities are assessed properly. You people hold a very important responsibility. So, moving forward, the role as a psychologist does not end here. The psychologist's role here is to evaluate the candidate. Psychologists ensure that those chosen for these critical operations possess the psychological strength which is necessary to fulfill the complexities of their role. There's a lot of hurdles that they have to cross. You have to select someone who has the stamina to cross those hurdles. So they decipher whether an individual can withstand intense pressure, they can make sound judgments in high stress situation, combat situations, and maintain their mental equilibrium at the same time when they are faced with adversity. So, this assessment isn't just about identifying potential issues, but also recognizing the strengths that can be harnessed to enhance the performance of these people in their military life. So, the gravity, now you understand the gravity of the task that you are responsible for, that is there in your shoulders. So, it's a responsibility that directly impacts the safety of, safety and success of the military endeavors. Whom you are selecting, whom you are sending into the armed forces is something, the responsibility is on you. The men and women who are chosen to stand on the front lines are our country's ultimate defenders. They are the one who will be defending us for a for very important strategies. And in our collective duty, it is to equip that they do their best. So the psychologist's contribution is instrumental. It's very important in ensuring that those who take on this momental responsibility are mentally primed, they are focused to face the challenges that lie ahead. They are, in a sense, the unsung heroes. So, we psychologists are nothing but the unsung heroes behind the heroes. So, we are fortifying the very foundation on which our national security stands. So now do you understand, right? What exactly is the role of psychologists in the Indian Armed Forces? And when it comes to what exactly we have to do, what exactly psychologists do in these Indian Armed Forces, there are roles and responsibilities. The assessment that has been assigned, that assessment that has been designed to choose those individuals or personnel which come for the Indian Armed Forces is something which designs by DIPR, Defense Institute of Psychological Research. So, what is your job in this? So, the first is the selection of the candidate. The candidate selection procedure in the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army and the Navy are almost same. However, the days might differ to some extent. For example, in the in the Indian military, like in the army where I was, the selection procedure was 5 days of selection procedure. Same happens with the Navy as well. However, in the Indian Armed Forces, the selection procedure is like continuation, like no, maybe a 5 days of selection procedure, then a gap, and then a 5 days of selection procedure. However, in the army and the navy, the selection procedure is continuous, like after 5 days and you get another batch, and then it goes on and on till the batch is ending. So let's look at it very carefully and understand it in a very wider aspect. So the selection of the candidate happens for the 5 day procedure. The first day is the stage one, where the candidates come. They are reporting to the SSB, the selection center boards, and they are giving the chest number. So, for example, 50 candidates have reported to the selection center. They have been allotted their different chest numbers. The first day is the intelligence test, in which they have a objective type of test, in which they have to, like it's a test of cognitive ability, whether you are aspect and generally, assessing numbers, and your time, your attention is judged. So this is the first test that they have done, intelligence test. Then we move to the PPDT, which is the picture perception test, in which checks the situational, the perception time, the selective attention, visualization, and space perception of the individual. So what happens is that there is one picture which is displayed in the screen, which all the 50 candidates look, and they have to make a story out of that picture. And then according to the story, they go for the group discussion, which is the third level, in which the verbal ability, the individual narration, how well they're behaving in a group like situation, whether they are participating or they are trying to, maybe delve, like maybe not exactly their group behavior, basically how exactly they are in a group, whether they are very commanding, whether they are able to understand other people's perspective or not. So this is taken care of. So this is the first stage one, which happens in first day of the candidate selection. Now comes the second day, in which the role of the psychologist is the prime, which is the psychological testing. So here, the candidates who have been tested on the grounds of the stage one, which is your intelligence test, your PPDT, your discussion. So some candidates are already taken forward with regards to those testing, and they are now gone for the stage two testing, which is the psychological testing. So the first and foremost test for the psychological testing is the TAT. We all know, we as psychologists, we all understand what TAT is, thematic apperception test. But here in military, the thematic apperception test is something which is standardized only for the military personnel in India. So it's a completely different standardization process which happens in the military psychology. So it's a part of the battery of psychological tests which is conducted in the SSB interview. It is a test of imagination where 11 plus 1 pictures are displayed on the screen. So 11 pictures of ambiguous nature are displayed, and there is one blank slide. So the way is the same. The candidate will write a story based on these pictures, these 11 pictures, which are ambiguous, which shows some characters, which shows some background, and they will write story. The exact test, your PPDT, your way of writing the story is confidential. It only gets
Test for
to
the
know
psychological
when one
testing is the
goes
TAT.
into the
We all know,
selection
we as
process.
psychologists,
And
we
there is
all
one blank
understand what TAT
slide
is,
which
thematic
actually assesses
apperception
what
test.
exactly is going on in the
But
candidate's
here
mind, or
in
how
military,
exactly
the
the candidate
thematic
perceives
apperception test is
some
something
kind
which
of
is
a
standardized
story which he
only for
has
the
to
military
mention in one
personnel in
blank
India.
slide. So it's a
So
completely
this is
different
TAT. The
standardization process
next is
which happens in
self-description
the
test.
military
In the
psychology.
self-description
So
test,
it's a
the
part of the
candidate
battery of
has to
psychological tests which is
describe
conducted in the
oneself with
SSB
the views
interview.
of friends,
It is a
their
test of
teachers or
imagination
employers,
where
with the views
11
of
plus
their
1
parents,
pictures are displayed
and the
on the
views
screen.
of
So 11
themselves
pictures
as to
of
how they see
ambiguous
themselves.
nature are
So these are
displayed,
the
and there is
four
one
things which
blank
comes
slide.
in
So
self-description test.
the
Third
way is
is
the same. The
WAT.
candidate
This
will
test is responsible for
write
judging
a
the
story
mentality or
based
personality
on
of the
these
candidate.
pictures, these 11
So
pictures, which are
it's
ambiguous,
we
which
all
show
know
some
about this as well.
characters,
So
which
word
show some
association
background,
test, so
and
which
they will write
these
stories.
words are something which is standardized only for the army personnel. So there are some words which are displayed on the screen, and the candidate has to make a sentence out of it. And it should be absolutely time based, so there is time pressure as well, so the response has to be really fast. And then is SRT, which is the situation response time. Here we have 60 questions in SRT test in the form of situations. For example, the candidate might be asked that he or she has to appear for an exam, but while he was driving from the home to the exam center, he saw someone lying on the road asking for help. What would he do? And he is getting late for the exam. So these are some of the situations which are presented in SRT, and the response is checked how exactly the candidate is responding. So these are the four very important major psychological testing procedures which is carried on stage 2, day 2 of the candidate selection in the selection center boards. Now, uh, what is the role of psychologist in the psychological testing, which happens in day two? Understand these tests are very confidential. You will not get to see those, the dossiers in which the candidate is responding, or the SRT materials or the WAT materials. It's very confidential. And believe me, when we go to access those materials, there are guards which come with us. Okay, so it's a very confidential thing. The key is only with the psychologist. Only a psychologist can open those doors where the psychological testing battery is kept. So they carefully maintain the detailed record of the assessment, which are strictly confidential. So these records are used for evaluation purposes and are not shared with any unauthorized individuals. So overall, the confidentiality of the psychological testing process is a cornerstone of its effectiveness and integrity. It's because of this particular thing that it's so effective in our military psychology. And it reflects the professionalism and ethical standards which upheld the psychologists in the selection center board. So whenever someone is some batch has come for which, for example, as I said, there are 50 candidates and we need 50 SRTs or 50 WAT, or so these are the batteries which we have to go check in, right, this is the number of batteries that we are picking up, and these all record is maintained by the psychologist. So this is something which is one of the very important tasks the psychologists do, which is maintaining the confidentiality of all the records and the assessment. So what happens in the next round? So now we know that the first day is the testing, the intelligence testing, PPDT, and the ground and the group behavior, the group discussion. The next is the psychological testing. Day 3.
Day three is the group testing officer task, in which the candidate go for the group testing officer, the GTOs, and they are giving on-ground situations and their group acceptance and how they are solving the problems are seen. This is done by the military personnel, which are the GTOs. Then they go for the interviewing officer. So day four is the interviewing procedure. They are interviewed on the basis of what subjects they have studied, how well they have performed, their general knowledge about the country. So, and then after the interview, they are sent back. Day three and day four is the group testing and interview. Day five, which is the last day, is the conference, in which the psychologist, the interviewing officer, and the GTO, which is the group testing officer, they all sit together and they assess each candidate in all three aspects. So if you psychologists say that no, I do not feel that this candidate is up to the mark or have that mental ability to or mental agility to go for this particular task, the candidate can be dropped there. So this is the importance of how you are assessing it. You really hold that value. So after the conference is done, there are some candidates which are selected, or some candidates not selected. So the result and debriefing is again done by the psychologist, in which the psychologist makes sure that the candidates who are not selected are de-stressed and are given a hope to try again. So now that we know that this is the work across all the SSBs, so how many SSBs are there across India? So for the Army and Navy, Bhopal and Bangalore are the SSBs, which has both Army as well as the Navy centers. Allahabad and Jalandhar have only Army selection boards. Vizag and Kolkata have Navy selection boards. Gandhinagar, Mysore, Guwahati, Varanasi, and Dehradun are the Air Force selection boards. Okay, so I hope that you like the work, what we do exactly in the military psychology. And if you really like it, now we would like to know what is the recruitment process of scientists in DIPR, right? So the recruitment process of scientists, I'm sure some of you must have applied for the previous vacancy which DIPR had or RAC had came out. So the first and foremost thing which is important is the master's degree in psychology. You should have a master's degree in psychology, and then after that there has to be a valid gate score, a net score. I believe maybe before there was net or gate score, but from now onwards there will be only gate scores, which DIPR is looking forward to. Then comes the subjective exam, which they have recently added. During my time when I appeared, it was just masters and net scores. Now they have also added subjective exams. The subjective exam syllabus is absolutely the same as UPSC psychology, so it's completely the same syllabus. Subjective here does not mean that you have to do writing. It'll be a computer based exam only. However, you might have to write, like a 2-3 liner or more. Like it's not choice questions. Or so after the subjective exam, when you are selected, when the results come, then you are called for interview round. In the interview round, there are senior scientists which are there for the interview, and two external scientists as well. After your interview, if someone would like to ask about what exactly happens in the interview, we can do that. But after the interview round, then if you are selected, the result is declared by RAC. After your result declaration, you still are not the part of RAC or DIPR. You have to go for medical test. If you pass some of the these medical tests are very basic medical tests, like, eye, checking your eye and your overall body measurements. So these medical tests are done. And then after the medical test, you have extensive training. Remember that what you are doing is something very, very important. You are selecting army personnel who will be having a very important role for the nation. So for that, you also have to be prepared, right? So extensive training to onboard on the assessment process is very important. You have an extensive training. There are 4 months of extensive training. Training one, which happens at DIPR, which is called the theory training. Let's know about a little bit about DIPR as well. So Defense Institute of Psychological Research Institute is one of the most premier labs of the Defense Research and Development Organization, which comes under the Ministry of Defense, Government of India. What are the core mandates of DIPR? It works for personal selection, psychological support, and services to the armed forces. We all know DIPR. We all have this knowledge that DIPR works for the research in the defense, right? But the foundation of DIPR was done in 1943, which was just done for the experimental board for selection. It was only an experimental board and not a complete board where it was fully functioning on itself. So it evolved. The evolution from the psychological research wing to the Directorate of Psychological Research, and then designation was given as Defense Institute of Psychological Research in October 1982, and it actually became a body in itself. So the first theory training is done in DIPR, wherein you learn about what exactly you will be, what are the aspects that you will be judging the military personnel on. There are 15 OLQs, or officer-like qualities, which you will be studying. What exactly is needed in the officer-like qualities? These 15 OLQs or officer-like qualities are very important. It makes the foundation or builds the foundation of what your work is going to happen. So the first is the theory training. The second training, so the theory training happens for 2 months in DIPR. The second training is the practical training, which happens in the SSBs. And you will be, for example, if you are given the opportunity to work in the armed forces, like in the Indian Army, for example, for maybe your posting is in Allahabad or in Jalandhar, which is an army SSB. So the practical will be always happening for, if you are working for Jalandhar, the practical will be given to Allahabad. So some other army board, so that you get trained there and the actual work is done on your actual posting board. So the SSB, in the SSBs, what you do is the actual practical work where you are actually assessing the candidates, or the candidates are coming and you're seeing the answers, the TAT responses, the WATSD, SRT responses. You're seeing the confidentiality procedure. You're seeing what exactly happens and how you maintain the records. There are senior scientists which helps you in this process, and you are in tandem with those senior scientists, and you work with them and get trained accordingly. So the psychological assessment and how scoring is done and how you finally get to the process of selecting a candidate. So this is what happens. This is the practical training which happens in the SSBs. Okay, so any questions so far, or anything that you would like to ask, or should I just finish it and then we may go for a question answer round, or what do you think?
Ma'am, we can have the question answer round after you finish.
Yeah, okay, you can ask me anything, or this actually this is in this slide I will be discussing about what exactly can happen beyond the surface, what are the advancements and what are the advantages of getting into SSB. So let's finish this and then we can have a question answer now, okay? So promotions is something which happens, promotions and advancements, like uh, you will be appointed as scientist B, and then you can move to scientist C, D, E till G. Okay, so you can be moving into that ladder, and obviously you will have salary perks, advancements as well. There is professional development and training. You will be getting frequent training in what work you are doing, and obviously there are a lot of other professional opportunities which will help you in developing more. There are research and development opportunities as well. If you think that you are just a master's student and you have joined DIPR, but you wish to do a PhD in psychology as well, or research was something which has always interested you, so you can do a PhD from DIPR as well. So there are DIPR affiliated universities like Bharatiya University. So it also gives this opportunity to finish your PhD and research work. So there are labs in DIPR, which is like personality lab, intelligence lab, organizational cognitive training development labs, which help you in your research work as well. You can also get military projects. You can be a part of these military projects, which are very confidential and definitely help you in a longer run to understand how the mechanism work from the very ground level. So military benefits, then comes the military benefits on goods and services. Obviously, it's one of the very important perks that you get to run a family. Retirement benefits and pension is something which, it's a government job. So there's retirement pensions, you get pension, and there's a long-term safety and security in the job. Consulting and advisory roles, which you can also take after your retirement. So the skills, experiences, and values that you gain in the Indian Armed Forces are highly transferable and valued in various sectors. So making it a very fulfilling and rewarding career choice for you, because it's not just only, it's not just only assessment, but it's a lot of other things as well that you will be doing. It is, your psychological dimensions in which you can easily go on for research, the development, different lab training, and in very higher level, you will be connected to your nation, your ground. So as we draw this discussion to a close, what I want to say is, it's clear that the psychological dimension in the Indian Armed Forces is not just a support system, but an essential pillar in nurturing the resilient, adaptable, and effective individual. So, beyond the uniform, the skills that are owned through psychological assessment and intervention that we psychologists do, it paves the way for a multifaceted career. So, these professionals are instrumental in shaping leaders who not only excel in the military roles, but also go on to making significant contribution in various sectors. So, this is what our psychologists, this is what the work of psychologists in the military is, and this is a very important role that we play. And I hope that we have the honor and we have the zealot to always keep on continuously progressing towards this aspect. So thank you, and may your path be marked by strength, purpose, and fulfillment. And Jai Hind.
Such a detailed presentation touching almost every aspect of the domain. But still, if anyone has any doubt, then you can ask ma'am. I guess we are already having some doubts. It's in the chat box. You can also ask by opening your mics. Shubham, please go ahead.
Hello,
Any
ma'am.
insights about,
Am I audible?
yeah.
Yes, Shubham,
Hello,
yes.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, thank you for your presentation so far. And I have a query regarding the lateral entry scheme that is there in the DIPR. Could you please share some insights about that? Lateral entry?
Lateral entry. Yes, as a research assistant, you can also enter in DIPR. However, it's a short-term entry. If this is what you're asking about, Shubham.
No, ma'am. Like a full-fledged entry, like whosoever is not able, like whosoever didn't get the opportunity to join as scientist B, and in the latter half of his or her career, he's joining or she's joining directly on the position of scientist, let's say DE, whatever, as in when the
Right now, we
posts
do
are
not have
available.
any such. Yeah, it used to happen before, definitely, but right now we do not have any such information, whether you can directly join for, or maybe later on, if there are some vacancies which comes for this lateral entry, which can be definitely, taken care of. But right now, they don't have any as such.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Yes, Yukta, go ahead.
Greetings, ma'am. My question is regarding the medical test that the IPR has. So basically, I wanted to ask that is there any problem if a person is wearing specs? When you talk about eyesight, is this the problem? And I also want to know that whether the height and weight criteria is also there. Do they have height and weight criteria in medical test?
So the medical test is a very basic test. Specs is better because you have to read a lot. You have to read a lot of answers and dossiers which comes from the candidate. So better you have a specs, or at least you will get it later. But no, there is nothing. There is no problem if you have specs, or but it's a basic test, as you know, whether you have anything which is very serious, which might come into, because you are getting into an in a government job. So these medical tests help us to assess the benefits that government gives after the job. So if you're having something beforehand, at least they have an entry to it. So say specs is fine, and height and weight, no, nothing like such. There is no
Okay,
fixed
ma'am.
criteria for that.
Okay, I have two more questions.
Yes.
Is there a preference to get uniform or is it
So sorry, Yukta. Actually, your voice is a little. Disturbing. Can someone hear the question?
Am I audible?
It's disturbing. You can type on the chat box.
Am I audible?
Now
Yes.
Yeah,
audible.
sure, I'll type. Okay, okay. So my question is that do we get uniform when we finally get through all the tests and then we are recruited as scientists? Do we get uniform?
See, as I said, we are the unsung heroes behind them. Okay, so we don't have uniform, but we are the basis of their selection procedure. But on the conference day, it's a formal, completely formal. So we wear something like sari or a proper suit, which it's a formal event. It's a conference, is something which is very formal. So that is the day where we dress up very formally. Otherwise, there is no uniform or badge or anything as such that we take.
Okay, ma'am. I have two more questions. Can I ask?
Yes, please
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
basically, I was having military psychology as my subject, and I read about it that sometimes military psychologists have ethical issues that as we have to keep confidential about the whatever we have discussed from the soldier if they are having any kind of mental issues or any kind of mental problems, but when it's asked from the authority, we have to give them the information even if it's against the ethics. So is this true?
So when we talk about confidentiality in the Indian Armed Forces, when you're working in the army, in the navy, and in the air force, so the only confidentiality is that you should not let go the assessment process, whatever you do in the assessment process outside, because it is only designed for the selection procedure, right? I mean, it's not something that can be done in any other aspect. It cannot be taken into clinical aspect. It cannot be taken into organizational aspect. It can only be done in a military aspect. So the confidentiality here have to be maintained by the scientist of what you discuss with the higher officials. If it is something that you think that should be kept confidential, you can you use your that insight and keep it confidential. But there is no written rule as such, because sometimes they discuss about warfare, what they have gone through. But it's something that is not something which comes into any confidentiality hard zone, or something that has been written that you should not discuss it with anyone.
So do we also act apart from assessment of the recruiters or the persons who are there to give exams?
So apart from the assessment, you mean in the SSBs or in DIPR?
As a scientist B or as a military psychologist in military, do we have any other job apart from assessment?
Yes, you can take projects. You can also work in close respects to DIPR to train the army personnel, navy personnel that comes for a selection process. You can also do your PhD, as I said. And the projects that you get in SSBs, like it's a 4-hour job, so you will be going at 9 in the morning or 8 in the morning. If you have a psychological test, then
In
obviously
close
early in the
respects to
morning.
DIPR
So
to
it's a
train the
4-hour
army
job.
personnel,
After
navy
that, you have a lot
personnel
of
that
time to
comes
do your
for a
selection
selection
research
process.
as well.
You
You
can
can
also do your PhD, as
enroll
I
into
said.
other universities as well. So this is the perks that we get, when because it's not 9 to 5 job that you are only restricted to work there. When you are in DIPR, you are only involved in assessment and the research work. But when you are in SSB, you can be involved in assessment as well as the research work, as well as your own, obviously, if you want to take up something of your own research or your own interest, own hobbies as well.
So are there any opportunities that are available for psychologists in military hospitals?
No, that is something different. I think it has to be not a direct entry from DIPR, but there is different entry for that.
Okay, ma'am. I have this one last question that why one should not join DIPR as a scientist B?
Why one should not join DIPR as a scientist B?
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe if but I don't see any reason to not join at Scientist B, because I think it is something which has filled me with lot of potential, which lot of opportunities, and I really regard my time out there. So I actually do not know why we should not join. But if you have any personal reasons, or if you have something which has you have a boundary about something, or maybe you are more interested in teaching, you're more interested in researching, then definitely you have ways to go. Psychology is something which is not only restricted to one field, and I feel so proud about it, because when I was given this subject, when my I think my father is also here, he has joined. So when जब हमें ये सब्जेक्ट मिला था साइकोलॉजी, तो बड़े तरीके से बोलते थे कि अरे आपको साइकोलॉजी मिल गया, बेटी आर्ट्स पढ़ेगी. बट अब you see from where to where this subject is coming. So I don't see psychology is never restricted to any boundary. You can just explore yourself. You can go to organizational, you can go to military, and it is just beyond border. That is why it's
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much for your patience and thank you so much for answering.
Next, we have Shivi. You can open your mask. You can open your mic and ask the question.
Thank you, Akriti. Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
yes, Shivi, you're audible.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, my question to you is, because anything degree of it, we know its emergence has a lot to do with World War II and how, psychology,
There's a little
Hanji?
disturbance, Shivi.
Okay. How psychology has a lot. Am I audible now, ma'am?
Yeah, you're audible, but I think in the
Hello?
middle there's some. Go ahead with the question, please.
Okay. Yeah, yes, ma'am. So, like I was saying, every time we talk about or we study about the emergence of psychology, we always keep in mind how it was built and, it escalated around World War II. Before the war also when we needed selection of personnel, and after the war also when, clinical psychology took an uplift with the PTSD cases and every cases that the soldiers had to go through, and they came up with
Yes.
Granted, now that the times have changed a lot, the scene of the military psychology has changed a lot. Yet, do you think, as someone who has worked with the officers and has worked professionally with the military of India, do you think we have some prospect, some provision of actually helping our soldiers in the military, in the aspects of counseling after they come from war or after they've been posted? Because although I give a great amount of credit to the training that the military does. We've been ranked the top 3 in how we train our personnel, our soldiers in the world. But do you still think there, because as as professionals or as students, we always know that mental disorders do not need an excuse to come. They can always come around, or issues with anxiety and stress can always come. So do you think military psychology in our country has the provision to offer such counseling to our soldiers whenever they need, or is it a prospect that is yet left unexplored?
Okay, so Shivi, as I can understand, there was a lot of disturbance as well. But you were asking two questions. First is whether there is any counseling or any kind of a PTSD or any other problems that our military personnel go through, in which we as psychologists can help. And secondly, about what are the roles, right? What are the roles beyond like, do we actually have this in our military personnel or not? The second question was that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me answer the first question. So, I would say that the psychological test and assessment, the standardization that DIPR has done, the OLQs, the TATs that we actually assess the candidates on are so amazing, I would say, that we have not reported any PTSD in Indian armed forces. That is something which is very amazing. I mean, I'm so proud of this, the psychological assessment that we have designed. Secondly, yes, there are closed group of psychologist which works with the army personnel if they need it. However, DIPR and SSB scientists are not the one who's responsible for that. We are only responsible for the assessment. Does this answer your question?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. It
Thank you.
does, ma'am, because I was a little
Next,
worried,
we have Richa.
because psychological issues do not even always come about with looking at people. Yeah.
Can you please repeat?
Thank you, Shivi.
Yeah, okay.
Next, we have Richa. Richa, you can ask your question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Richa.
Thank you so much, ma'am. First of all, the session was amazing. And my question to you is that I have taken up subjects along with military psychology, subjects like OB and organizational development and change. So I wanted to know that whether there's any role of psychologist in army for these kind of roles. Like, do we have a take on the organizational side of army? Because it is an organization at the end. So studying these subjects will help me in any way in that.
So, Richa, if I answer your question, what you are doing in psychology, whether it's a organizational organizational background or a clinical background or a cognitive background. I am a researcher from a cognitive background where I was working with memory and emotions and something to do with the virtual reality of the world. However, if you really have the zeal, if you really have that intrinsic motivation within you to get into this military psychology world, you will try to connect your research, you will try to connect your ideas with how it can be helped to you, can be a help to your nation, and definitely it has projects for that. Okay, so it does not matter from which background you come from. Even if it's an organizational background, you have opportunities. Even if it's a clinical background, you have opportunities. Even if it's a cognitive or whatever biological background, you still have opportunities. When you get into a DIPR, you are given an extensive training of 4 months where you learn about the theories, we learn about the foundation of these assessment, we learn about the practicals of these assessment. So you are anyways trained in how to assess the candidates in the military. What they are looking forward is that you have a psychological background, you are able to understand these terms. So it's completely fine even if you're coming from an organizational background.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, we have some question in the chat box also, if you can answer them
Okay.
as well.
Oh yeah, let me see then. Masters or just a general master's degree in psychology is enough? Also, is there any diploma in military psychology that any institute offers? So, yeah, a general master's degree is enough. You should have good scores to study well if you want to get into it. And I don't think so. Any diploma is also required. So even if you have a nice score and good net or gate score, you can apply for this position, of course. Are there any diploma in military psychology in any institute? I have not checked, but I can definitely, get into it and maybe let you know in mail or something. You can mail me and then I'll find it out. So the next question is, ma'am, do we need a good gate rank or just a qualification of gate enough for the selection? So they have not given any upper hand criteria of this is what score has to be. So right now, the only gate score is what is asked. They might, consider someone who has a better gate score, but it's not mentioned in their vacancy and qualification list.
Next, we have Aparna. She has raised the hand. Aparna, you can ask your
Hello,
question.
ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, Aparna, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is regarding flight testing. For example, ma'am, when a test pilot goes for checking the maneuverability of any new aircraft, so does DIPR or any psychological institute has any role in providing psychological support for the defense personnel and their families? Ma'am, knowing that the casualty rate is very high in any indigenous aircraft.
Absolutely. So this is something, that I also had a very close connection with, because my research was on a virtual reality in memory and emotion. So there was a finding which said that, when the pilot is not in a very good affective state or emotional state, and the pilot has to at the same time do a lot of tasks, a lot of tasks involved, in which they have, like, present memory, prospective memory, retrospective memory to deal with. So there have been accidents which have happened because of that, which says that when the memory and the emotions are not in line, there are more chances of having more mishaps or more, accidents. So this was something that even I was interested in. There are projects being built up right now for this particular situation. There are more training opportunities in memory and other tasks which the pilot has to do in hand. Like, for example, there are 50 tasks that they have to do at the same time. Okay, so these are some of the projects that have come up. So right now they are still working on it. At the same time, these pilots have been trained a lot on these aspects. They are trained a lot. It's not a 4 month or a 1 year thing, that they, when they are chosen for this role, they know that they are the best. So there is a lot of training which happens at the background as well. And when you are there in DIPR, as a psychologist, as a scientist, obviously you can, have an effect on how they are working, because there will be projects that you will be assigned. Your research findings and how you are coming up with new ideas will obviously, affect how they will be performing in their practical life as well. So yes, there are opportunities. You can be directly involved in one of the projects which says that a pilot handling of these simultaneous tasks, how they can be doing. So these are some of the confidential, projects which are going on right now, and they're working towards this. And scientists and psychologists are also involved in it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I also want to ask one question, maybe a last question. Okay, so it's not a question, it's a kind of, I want to know your point of view regarding this. So whenever we think about army, usually a kind of male figure or a image of a boy comes in our mind. But nowadays situations are improving. Like I remember when in my 12th I saw a dream of joining NDA. It got broken because at that time girls are not allowed for NDA. But nowadays, for NDA also girls are eligible. So I wanted to know, like, what's the gender ratio in DIPR? Like, we have worked there. So is it equality is being seen there, or males are more? So that's what I want to know.
Thank you, Akriti. I think you asked something that was there in my heart from the very beginning. So, if you talk about gender ratio there in DIPR as a research in the military psychology, it is just the opposite. There are more females there. There is more girl power. There is more women power. There are more ladies who are working towards the military, and they are doing much, much, much more well. If we talk about SSBs. Again, I was there in an army SSB in Kapurthala, and we were six psychologists appointed for the selection procedure. All of us were girls. Okay, so six psychologists, all of us are girls, fighting for some candidate who has come for NDA or IMA or I don't know what. Okay, so even if you have not went, even if your dream was broken to not go for NDA, you can still select candidates who come for NDA. So you have still have an upper hand. Secondly, if we talk about people in the military, I would also say there is women have a huge role to play in in the military. As what I have witnessed is there, the colonels or the ranking of the people there is something which is not something which is not based on any gender. They are doing the same task, even if it's the GTO officer, the ground testing officer, which judges the physical stamina and the group behavior on grounds, are both male and female. So it's something which you will definitely not feel. There is no gender bias. There is nothing as such in the military world.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering it so beautifully. And if anyone still have any question, then you can connect ma'am via LinkedIn. You can follow our page to know ma'am's LinkedIn ID. Now, I just want to sum up this by thanking you, ma'am, for your valuable time and making this Air Force Day memorable for all of us. I'm sure your wisdom will enlighten our paths. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.